to wait for more people to come in. Thank you. Good afternoon again, everyone. We just want to repeat the event guidelines and reminders that's here on your screen. Kindly note that the program is being recorded via Zoom and YouTube. The event is also live streamed via YouTube through the link that you find in the screen. Please be mindful of your microphones and video cameras throughout the program. We recommend for you to use the side-by-side with speaker video option. Kindly use the chat function for your questions and comments, which will follow after the reactors' interventions. There will be an evaluation survey at the end of the session, and requests for e-certificates will be made available to those who have accomplished the evaluation form. Thank you. Good afternoon again to all of you, and we would like to start this webinar with our Philippine National Anthem.
Alam ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
To lead us in our opening prayer is Dr. Jaime Acevedo.
Salamat, Tina. Naririnig naman ako, Tina. I'm just checking my audio.
Yes.
Salamat ulit.
Yes.
Okay. Nais kong anyayahan ang bawat isa sa ilang sandali ng pananahimik. Diyos na makapangyarihan, mapagkalingang tagapaglikha ng lahat, Purihin ang inyong pangalan. Salamat po para sa biyaya ng aming pagtitipon sa araw na ito. Salamat po para sa kagandahang loob ng aming mga naanyayahang mga tagapagsalita na magbabahagi ukol sa kanilang mga karanasan, kaugnay ng pagtugon sa problema ng gutom at kawalan ng seguridad sa pagkain ng marami sa aming mga kapwa. Panginoon, maraming hamon at pagsubok ang pumapaligid sa amin. Kayo nawa ay maging aming sandigan sa gitna ng lahat ng ito. Sang-ayon sa pagninilay ng Santo Papa Francisco sa kanyang dokumentong Fratelli Tutti, naway pag-alabin ninyo sa aming mga puso ang inyong espiritu ng pag-ibig at pakikipagtagpo sa aming kapwa. Magkaisa nawa kami bilang isang komunidad para mangarap at kumilos alang-alang sa isang mundong mas makatao at mas makatarungan para sa lahat. Maging amin nawa ang adhikain ni Santo Papa Francisco nung kanyang sinulat, how important it is to dream together. Let us dream then as a single human family, as fellow travelers sharing the same flesh, as children of the same earth, which is our common home. Each of us bringing the richness of his or her beliefs and convictions, each of us with his or her own voice. Brothers and sisters all. Ang lahat ng ito ay aming dalangin, Panginoon, sa kapangyarihan ng inyong banal na Espiritu, magpasa walang hanggan. Amen.
Maraming salamat, Jimmy, sa unang ating opening prayer na nagbigay ng tone, no, para sa ating webinar ngayong hapon. So again, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar in behalf of the Working Group on Food Security and Nutrition that is made up of the 3 Ateneo Universities, the Ateneo de Manila, Ateneo de Cagayan, and Ateneo de Davao. Also part of this working group is the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, or SDSN. We especially welcome those of you who have attended our previous webinars since we started in 2020 as a response to the emergent food crisis after the lockdown. Since then, we have organized around 6 webinars on food and nutrition-related issues each year, and this is now our 17th webinar and the last for 2022. Today's webinar is entitled Different Actors in Sustainable Food Systems in the Future, Focus on Partnerships. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Christina Liamzon, part-time faculty at the Economics Department of the Loyola Schools and the School of Government at the Ateneo de Manila University, and I will be moderating this afternoon's webinar. Allow me first to give an overview of the context for this webinar. In the past several weeks, news have been focusing on the food security crisis that is looming all over the world, fueled by the 3 Cs, the COVID pandemic, climate change, and conflicts in many parts of the world. In 2021, the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, estimated there were 821 million hungry people globally, going back to comparable figures in 1995 when the World Food Summit was held. The same situation of a food crisis is ominous for the Philippines today. Similarly, FAO reported that from 2019 to 2021, 5.3 million Filipinos were severely food insecure and 48 million more suffered from moderate food insecurity. The same FAO reported also estimated that there are some 5.7 million undernourished Filipinos. This means that they were unable to eat enough food to meet the daily minimum dietary energy requirements over a period of 1 year. This rate of undernourishment puts the Philippines as among the 63 countries with the largest number of undernourished people. Using the 2022 Global Hunger Index, or the GHI, which uses the variables or indicators of undernourishment, child stunting, child wasting, and child mortality, the Philippines is ranked as 69th out of 121 countries, with a score of 14.8 level of hunger, which is considered moderate. But when it comes to a particular variable, which is child stunting, the 2019 Food and Nutrition Research Institute finding shows a very high rate of child stunting, placing the country in the top 10 countries globally, and something we should be quite alarmed about. For the most part, Filipinos are undernourished because they cannot afford a healthy and nutritious diet. Consider that one estimated cost of a daily healthy diet has been consistently rising from 226.60 pesos in 2017 to 242 pesos and 53 centavos in 2020, and wages have certainly not kept pace with food costs. In just recent months, the situation of high food prices has been compounded by rising costs of fuel and energy, the supposed lack of food supplies such as sugar, which has pushed more food imports. Recent statistics on the country's inflation rate shows that food makes up 81% of the increase in the national inflation rate. We as consumers are all too aware of these rising food prices. In July, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, noted that in terms of diet quality, the average food intake of Filipinos is high in cereals and tubers, but low in fruits and vegetables. And yet, despite being heavy on starchy food, such as rice, only 30% of Filipino households were able to meet the recommended level of energy in 2015. Clearly, food insecurity and hunger for a significant number of our population has remained as a critical problem over the decades, and the solutions to address it have proven insufficient. Yet, I am sure it has come to the minds of many, if not most of us, that the Philippines is a highly agricultural country teeming with rich natural resources. Why has it been unable to adequately feed our population? Among the key factors for this situation are the lack of access to land and other productive resources of our food producers, especially our small food producers, such as post-harvest facilities. An overemphasis on the commodity approach to agriculture, wherein production and resources have been concentrated on crops like rice, corn, coconut, sugar, coffee, to drive growth, while not focusing enough on the production of healthy and nutritious foods like fruits and vegetables. Access to credit and crop insurance, agricultural extension, and technologies are limited, particularly for small farmers and fisherfolk. The problems of food insecurity and malnutrition and their varied causes are complex and highly interrelated. Addressing these and finding holistic and sustainable solution needs a major shift of framework, one that uses a food systems approach to understanding and solving the issues and challenges. Such a shift entails moving away from previous approaches of focusing primarily only on production or only on health and nutrition targets. A food systems approach broadly looks at the following 6 areas and their synergies, ensuring as much as possible the interconnections of these areas and the nexus for their integrated action. These areas are agriculture and food security, health and nutrition and diets, water for drinking and for hygiene and sanitation, or WASH, social protection for the poor and hungry and marginal groups, education and awareness raising, climate change adaptation and mitigation. Trying to learn and understand the contributions that are being made by different actors involved in sustainable food systems has been the focus of the last two webinars organized around this theme. The first webinar was on feeding programs of several institutions that was held in early July. And the second webinar was in late September on the researches and studies of 5 universities on technical and socioeconomic concerns related to solving food insecurity and hunger. In this third webinar in the series, which is also the last for 2022, the focus is on partnerships. The Working Group on Food Security and Nutrition realizes that the concerted effort of various and all segments, all sectors of society, what is now more popularly termed as a whole of society approach, is vital to make a real headway towards eradicating hunger, which is the Sustainable Development Goal, or SDG goal number 2, targeting zero hunger. We have thus brought together 3 civil society organizations which are engaged at different levels, global, national, and local, to share their experiences and perspectives related to feeding children, including those from indigenous communities, assisting poor beneficiaries to grow their food locally, and their partnerships and collaboration with other actors to pursue the common goals of addressing food insecurity and malnutrition. We are hopeful that the inputs and insights they will share will be helpful in giving ideas to you, our audience, most of whom are from educational institutions, on ways by which you as well can be involved. It is in building, strengthening, and sustaining partnerships with different actors, especially with government, where we can hopefully have more effective and impactful programs and solutions to solving hunger and malnutrition. Following our 3 speakers, there will be 2 student reactors who come from the Ateneo de Manila University and Ateneo de Davao University. Both belong to organizations that are linked with support groups for the indigenous peoples. An open forum will then follow the reactors, and we look forward to a lively exchange with you, our audience. We encourage you to write your comments and questions in the chat box addressed to particular speakers, if any, and we will read out these questions during the open forum. We will then end this webinar with a brief synthesis and closing remarks to be given by Mr. Roel Rabanera, the Executive Director of the Xavier Science Foundation in Cagayan de Oro. To begin the presentations by our speakers, I'm privileged to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Oliver Oliveros, who's speaking to us all the way from Rome, Italy. Oliver Oliveros is the Interim Executive Director of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, a coalition of foundations committed to help shift food and agriculture systems towards greater sustainability, security, and equity. Prior to this, he was the engagement lead of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, in charge of stewarding its network of more than 100 experts and practitioners from around the globe and from diverse constituencies. He has worked with several other international organizations, such as the Agropolis Foundation, as Deputy Director and as Global Coordinator of the Duras Project. He was formerly with the Secretariat of the Global Forum on Agricultural Research in FAO in Rome, Italy, where he worked on issues related to research partnerships and civil society organizations. Before coming to Europe in 1999, Oliver worked at the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. Oliver studied human ecology from the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, as well as management and resource mobilization and geography in Rome, London, and Montpellier. Oliver, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tina, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you today and share our experiences from the philanthropic sector. Yeah, I think one of the topic of the of the overall seminar today is really about partnerships and the role of different actors. So I thought it would be good to share what the philanthropic sector is contributing into this process. Let me share my screen and walk you through this this presentation. Yeah, so Tina has talked to us about the context, about the food systems being at the heart of our current planetary crisis, or I would say poly-crisis, kasi sama-sama na siya, all at the same time, right? And food systems is responsible for up to 30% of gas emissions due to the food waste that is being generated. And this is the third largest emitter of global greenhouse gas emissions. And they're all now in Egypt talking about how to address climate change within the Conference of Parties in its 27th session. And sustainable agricultural practices lead to increased pressures on land and deforestation, and they are the primary drivers as well of biodiversity losses. Ecosystems and land degradation further exacerbate climate change and extreme weather events, impacting on the resilience, particularly of local communities, and particularly those in the coastal areas, and their livelihoods and food security is obviously impacted by this. And then, of course, as if that is not enough, COVID pandemic hit us all in the last 3 years and has exposed the complex relation between human, animal, and ecosystems health. And it's adding another layer of stress, both in our socio-economic and ecological system, further pushing away more than 130 million people towards chronic hunger, bringing to the total of malnourished people in the world up to 800 million. And Tina reminded us of FAO figures on that one. And then again, earlier this year, the conflict in Ukraine is a further proof of how conflict feeds hunger, forcing people out of their homes and wiping out their resources of income. In fact, according to WFP, the World Food Program, conflict is still the biggest driver of hunger. Keep in mind, that, this is something that can really be, avoided, but yet, due to reasons that we all know as we read in the papers, it's just very unfortunate. So the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing climate emergency, the increasing hunger are all linked to human-made and sustainable food systems that degrade the environment and undermine human and animal health. This crisis exacerbate existing vulnerabilities and structural inequalities at the heart of social and natural systems. And therefore, as Tina mentioned towards the end of her presentation, the case for systemic change, from policy to practice, has never been clearer. There is an increasing awareness that our food systems are in crisis and are not prepared to withstand expected shocks. In this moment of increased instability, we also see the strengthening and proliferation of initiatives aiming to address some of these challenges. And so various actors are really stepping up and stepping in to contribute to addressing this polycrisis. So from the foundation sector, they are basically private entities which are stepping up to serve and contribute to serving public goods. And foundations are nothing new. They existed in Asian civilizations in the Middle East, in Greece and in Rome. Plato's academy, for instance, was established by an endowment that helped to sustain its existence for 900 years. And then you also have the counterpart in the Islamic world, which developed the Waqf as early as 7th century. And then because of, or thanks to the Industrial Revolution that led to emergence of wealthy European merchants, which then established their respective worthy causes, giving rise to bigger foundations in the global north. And in the 19th and 20th century, those who are wealthy industrialists, developed their own family foundations, contributing to different institutions that we know today. Like in the case of agricultural research, the Ford and the Rockefeller foundations were the ones in the driving seat of coming up with international research institutions like IRRI in Los Baños. But then, of course, the impact of this international agricultural research centers are also seen as something that is two-sided. No? While they contributed to advancing research, there are also some repercussions in terms of the type of research that have been promoted. And so we are saying here that the foundations have this specific role that they play, and they have to be mindful in terms of how they play that specific role. So they have broad purposes and great freedom of action, including ability to conduct worldwide programs. Now you have community foundations, which are supported by donors and are located in specific community or region, addressing context-specific issues. You also have corporate or corporation-sponsored foundations, which are more focused on their corporate social responsibility. You have operating foundations that carry out projects with their own staff, and you have independent foundations established by wealthy individuals and families. And of course, each foundation, depending on their category, would have their focus. They have their different ways of doing things. But generally, foundations, as we say, can take risks. They contribute in fundamental, risky, exploratory research, which would not otherwise attract funding from the traditional donor. But sometimes they are being asked, are they taking enough risks? Or are they just really looking at a quick fix solutions? No? But foundations, another role that they do is really contribute in building capacity, in supporting marginalized groups like indigenous peoples, civil society organizations, farmers organizations, etc. So their focus is really varied, and their area of interventions as well. In principle, they have flexibility also to respond to the needs of these communities, and their funding can also trigger research or other initiatives by other funders or by bigger funders. And then another role that foundations can play or are playing is as brokers that link small community foundations with bigger foundations, but also communities to other communities from one stakeholder to the other. So they are basically serving as conveners or gap connectors or dot connectors, so to speak, but not necessarily without a specific stand on specific issues. No? While they can play that convening role, they themselves would have a specific stand on specific issues. So in other words, foundations have the privilege, they have the responsibility, and the opportunity to leverage resources and networks to advance sustainable food systems on the political, economic, social, and environmental agenda. Privilege, responsibility, and opportunity are also being increasingly questioned. And currently in the foundation sector, there are debates around the legitimacy of philanthropy in addressing or contributing to community causes. So foundations are bringing in wealth. They're bringing in influence, access, power, and privilege to the table. And they play that distinct role in advancing food systems transformation. At least this is our experience in the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. As Tina mentioned, it is a strategic alliance of around 30 foundations, both in the global north and a few in the global south, trying to advance food systems transformation. Collectively, we're working on a set of issues here, as you would see, addressing the compounding health crisis, looking at the heavily industrialized agriculture sector that we have today. We're looking at ways that we could account for the hidden cost of food, advocating to veer away from the metrics like yield per hectare, which does not necessarily reveal the negative impacts of food. And we're really trying to look at ways by which we could account for the final price of food in policy documents and on balance sheets. But not only to capture the negative externalities, but also to capture the positive externalities in terms of the role of agriculture and farming in sequestering carbon, in increasing insect pollination and resilience to natural disasters. The Global Alliance is also working on sustainable agriculture, trying to look at evidence that our dependence on fossil fuels and polluting chemical inputs is not doing our environment any good, because there are a lot of hidden costs in it. And of course, we're also addressing the escalating climate change, working with various actors, while recognizing that food systems are both contributors, no, and solution to climate change. So how do we mitigate those negative contribution of agriculture in climate by looking at ways by which we could promote more sustainable approaches to food production? The way by which the Global Alliance work is basically principles-based, as we call it. Of course, when we talk about food systems, it's really difficult to come up with a commonly accepted definition of what does food systems mean, or what does a sustainable or resilient food systems require, no? Because it really is a new way of thinking, and looking at different ways or different scales and the different level of engagement of different stakeholders. So at the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, we really try to approach food systems transformation using different sets of principles: renewability, resilience, equitability, diversity, healthy, inclusivity, and interconnectedness. So we look at this as really the different principles that should embed and guide the way by which we look at our food systems, no? And food systems transformation requires new and better solutions at scale through a systems level approach and deep collaboration amongst different stakeholders. And we have what we call as our call to action. And we're advocating for 7 actions, right? One is ensuring inclusive, participatory approaches to governance as a way to address the structural inequities in food systems by mobilizing philanthropic sector in global policy debates, from UN Food Systems Summit to the Committee on Food Security discussions housed in FAO. We're advocating for increased research for public goods that emphasizes the indivisible ecological, health, social, and economic goals, particularly from the public sector, no? Because most of these researches are being advocated and funded by public research institutions. We're advocating for better accounting for environmental, social, health impacts of food system policies and practices to inform better decision-making. We're advocating for direct public sector investment towards ecologically beneficial forms of farming, healthy food, and resilient livelihood and communities. Unlocking investment opportunities in sustainable food systems, and aligning private philanthropic and multilateral funders with national food systems actors. Particularly now when we look at investment opportunities, there's a big movement towards divesting and impact investments, no? And in fact, impact investing, so to speak. Really looking at where do these philanthropic foundations, where do private sector use their money, essentially, or their capital, no? The idea there is to push them towards looking at green investment options. Another advocacy that we're pushing is creating an enabling environment where agroecology and regenerative approaches would flourish. No? As Tina mentioned earlier, we really need to look at ways by which we could promote a more, how do you call this, long-term solution to addressing the current food crisis. And then lastly, but not the least, is promoting nutritious, sustainable, whole feed diets adapted to local ecosystems and sociocultural contexts. For instance, also, no, in the international research area, most of the investments are really put into rice, wheat, and corn, and we tend to forget crops that are probably less, which are taking less attention from the global research community, but are nonetheless very important from the local context. In Africa, for instance, sorghum and millet is really important. They withstand droughts, but they are attracting very little attention. And there is also very little research that is invested in terms of propagating and disseminating and looking at ways that we could further improve the way we produce vegetables and fruits, which are very important sources of diets, of healthy diets. And so within the alliance, we say that the food systems transformation requires different solutions involving different actors. So we also have this approach of forging new insights and strengthening evidence for global systems change, because you cannot convince, obviously, policymakers and other stakeholders if you don't have enough evidence to show that what is being done is not sustainable. No, so we're looking at different evidence, not only science-based, but also evidence in terms of practice by indigenous communities, by local communities, etc. We are also convening key actors, facilitating dialogue and strengthening connections across stakeholders who are in the table, and what is being discussed in the table, around the table on food systems issues is really important. No? So we really need to make sure that different voices are heard, and we are trying to raise and float different perspectives so we would know exactly where different stakeholders are coming from. And then the last one is, based on these forging insights and convening, how do you then stimulate transformative change? Now, so you look at the common or convergence areas across different actors, and there you try to develop, how do you call this, common actions that can be supported and funded and move forward at various levels. So as you could see, food is really a vastly complex issue. So it requires systems thinking. Changes in the way food is grown, processed, distributed, and consumed have always threatened our ability to ensure sustainable and equitable food systems. So we need to transform the future of food, and that requires a holistic approach that recognizes how all issues are interconnected. So systems thinking is really key to this one, to fully understand systems dynamics, anticipate systems behavior and interactions, and ultimately identify opportunities for transformation. And this is where I also see education institutions, higher educational institutions play a very, very important role. How do we form the next generation of agricultural professionals, no, in the country? No, what do we need to do to revisit curriculum by which agriculture and food is taught in schools? How do we form our policy makers in such a way that they're really looking at the interconnections of food production, of nutrition, of health, and biodiversity conservation and climate? And it's also linked to issues around social justice and equity. So I think this is really important to look into from various facets. No? And this is one of the ways by which the philanthropic community is trying to promote. Moving, when we talk about food, it's really beyond just production, but also looking at the enabling environment. And it's not really that easy, but I think each one would have to have their roles to play, and it's really important that we are all coming together and promote what could be an innovative way of partnering together and looking at areas that we could collaborate on. So let me end there and turn over to you, Tina, for moderation.
Thank you very much, Oliver, for that very interesting presentation, giving us an idea of the work that you're doing in the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, and the work that the foundations or the members of your Global Alliance are actually doing, which is quite different from what we have, as you said, what many other foundations are doing in terms of the work that they're supporting, for example. And the fact that your members are into looking at food systems transformation is really quite interesting and quite encouraging, in the sense that now we realize that more and more foundations, because they also have the resources, want to focus on new and better innovations, solutions, giving really trying to address it in a more systems thinking level rather than systems approach, rather than just seeing them in terms of really segmentation and fragmentation, and trying to build deeper collaborations among the different stakeholders. So thank you for that encouraging what we call this, the inputs that you've given, and the challenge that I think, and the question you posed for educational institutions, how can we better prepare our students, not just let's say in agriculture, but those who are in food-related disciplines, or our policy makers, to be able to think in the same way, in systems, not just in very narrow kinds of the kinds of narrow thinking which used to really pervade a lot of a lot of our education. So thank you again, Oliver, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions that will be brought forward by our audience. So now I'd like to turn over to the floor to our second speaker. Tina Hipolito mobilizes advancement for rural kids, or ARCs, partnerships with impact-focused corporations that want to co-invest with rural communities and scale up feedback, ARC's food security solution to transform 1 million lives in the country. In a previous role under a global tobacco control organization, Tina coordinated a complex international partnership network made up of UN agencies, knowledge hubs, industry monitoring centers, national and regional advocacy groups, and a global industry watchdog. She completed a master's degree in public management from the University of Potsdam in Germany, and holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and accountancy from the University of the Philippines. In 2018, she was selected to be part of the 48th cohort of the prestigious St. Gallen Leaders of Tomorrow Network. I'd like to turn over the floor now to Ms. Tina Hipolito of ARC. Tina, please.
Thank you, Tina. So later, I request everyone, if you're asking questions or making comments to Tina or to me, please specify which Tina you're referring to. But good afternoon to everyone, and I'm so happy to be back, to be here in like an academic setting. So nice to see students from different universities. And thank you, Tina, for setting the context earlier, because I feel like this is a really important contextualization, because that is exactly the problem that ARC is working in, what we want to address. And I think for the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, I really loved your presentation. And I hope that in our presentation, in ARC's presentation, you would be able to see some of the principles that you value at work in us as maybe a case study. So let me share my screen. Okay, so before I go into my presentation, I want to share a brief video to give a small introduction about ARC and our program.
This story starts with a sad truth, but I promise it will end with hope. Too many of those that provide our food are hungry themselves. Chemical farming has limited farmers to just one crop, leaving them unable to feed their families. This realization led me to leave my investment banking career and invest my skills to create a sustainable solution to the hunger problem faced by farmers and fisherfolk. ARC was born in 2009 to help kids in rural communities stay in school instead of dropping out because of hunger. Together with parents and teachers, we made vegetable-based lunches that were sourced directly from parents in the community. At only 5 cents per meal, we provided 1 million lunches in 16 communities. ARC Lunch is the only school lunch program in the world that parents can afford to pay for from day one and fully fund on their own after 3 years, making it self-sustaining. But then the COVID pandemic hit. Villages in the Philippines were put on lockdown. Fisherfolk were not allowed to fish, and farmers could not sell their rice or corn crops. They had no access to vegetables and protein brought in from far away. The hungry became even hungrier. This desperate situation gave birth to ARC Feedback, a community-wide vegetable exchange. ARC Feedback invites families to plant different vegetables in their backyards. How does it work? Community leaders like Belinda help manage the program and go door to door encouraging people to join. The families grow vegetables for 4 weeks. By the 5th week, leaders launched a vegetable exchange in a central area in the village. This vegetable exchange takes place once a week for the next 8 weeks. During the exchange, families bring at least 3 kinds of vegetables harvested from their backyards. And in exchange, they bring home their fair share of over 20 vegetables. Everyone's contribution is valued. For every $1 worth of vegetables, families get a raffle ticket and a chance to win a fun prize. Feedback has enabled communities to solve hunger on their own in just 5 weeks. It has created a diversity of food and even a new income stream, with excess harvest being sold to neighboring villages. It has inspired the young to be involved and mothers to be first-time entrepreneurs. Because it is 100% operated by the community, feedback has made them happy, strong, and united. Moreover, feedback is sustainable. 1 year after graduating from feedback, 94% of participants in Trasiano still harvest from their backyards. Not only have they not gone hungry for a second year in a row, 2/3 or a majority now get 25% of their annual income from their vegetable ventures. The Village Council pays for 50% of the program cost to operate feedback. Through ARC, you can co-invest the other 50%. For $25, you can secure a family's food for life. For $7,500, you can secure an entire village. Around the Philippines, more and more communities are ready to launch ARC Feedback. It is a hunger solution we will soon bring to the rest of the world. And so we end this with hope. We hope that you too will make sure that farmers and fisherfolk never go hungry again.
Okay, I hope that gives you a good introduction of our program and gives you the sense of fun that we always want to bring whenever we do feedback in a community. So now that you've had an overview, what has been our impact to date? Since we've launched feedback, we've had 35 community partners across 6 provinces. The program captures those most in need. So actually 95% of our participants are living on less than 183 pesos a day. And this is even less than the cost that Tina mentioned, to have a nutritious meal. We've secured 105% of at-risk families on the average, and this translates to 8,600 families engaged and over 76,000 lives transformed and impacted as a result of this community transformation. What's more, as you saw from the video, 90% of feedback graduates continue planting and being food secure even 1 year after the program. So with all this impact, I think what surprises people about ARC is that actually we're a small team. Our mighty team is actually small and remote. We don't have any program officers on the ground, and Ayesha leads us from New York. So what's the secret, right? What's the secret of this impact? So this is our superpower, our co-investment partnership model. ARC has 2 kinds of partnerships. First is one with communities. They want communities that want to invest in their food, health, kids' schooling, and a self-sustaining future. And then we have a partnership with champions that want to fuel these communities by co-investing in those dreams. With co-investment, we solve from within and we solve for true sustainability. But what does this mean in practice? So for us, co-investment means it's a partnership of equals. Whenever we scale feedback to a new province or region, their yes to us is as important as our yes to them. And this means that we have to be okay that some municipalities and communities say no, that they're not ready to partner on a co-investment approach. And it also means that even if we want to do it in barangays which we think need feedback the most, we can't force them into the program. Even if we want it for them, they need to want it for themselves as well. So The happy picture here is a great photo of Barangay Basiao. It's one of the communities that said yes to joining our next wave, Wave 8. And actually, ARC is finalizing the partnership with them as we speak. Co-investment also means it's built on 100% buy-in. Even before we do feedback in a community, we actually go through a very extensive site development process. So actually, in layman's terms, the best analogy is ligawan. Nililigawan namin sila. So we present it to them. And we try to win their hearts, really, really like make it resonate with them. We not only present feedback to the mayor or the barangay captain, but to everyone. So at the municipal level, this means the vice mayor, sangguniang bayan, treasurer, municipal agriculture officer, planning officer need to be on board. At the community level, this means that the kagawads and other community leaders should also want to do it. So the process is really, really extensive because feedback can't operate on a single person's imposition alone. It only works if it's a shared dream among everyone who's going to be involved in the entire operation. And when we've seen that when communities set dreams, the desire to solve problems in their community already comes from them. Third is that co-investment means that communities are so serious about their dream, they're backing it with budget. So with budget comes internal oversight structure, somebody is making sure that this is getting done. It comes with commitment and it gives them focus. They are able to hire a field team for it. And then for our champions, right, the champions who are co-investing with these communities, this process means that they're co-investing with those who are determined to make an impact, to get a return on this investment that they are making in themselves. So when feedback starts, ARC is actually the coach. So we bring our expertise, we bring our support, we bring our institutional knowledge. But it's actually the communities who are solving for the results daily. They co-lead and operate the solution from day one. And to give you a better appreciation of the grit and determination that our communities have, I want to share a snapshot from Wave 7. So from Wave 7, that's our latest wave cohort of communities that came from La Libertad, Negros Oriental. They were 9 barangays. And to make planting possible, they actually needed to solve for several structural issues like water access, soil quality, pest management. And I don't know if people in the audience are planting, but this is pretty serious. These are serious challenges. And soil quality isn't just about, rocky soil. It's rocky soil, sandy soil, salty soil. There are a lot of considerations that go into it before communities are even able to plant. And I would say that the impact is really hard won. When we showed you 105% of securing at-risk families, that means for some communities with really, really far away sitios, they need to trek 2 hours, cross rivers, mountains to sign up families in those far and remote places because they are the target. They need it the most. They need to be involved. When we say that we've secured 8,600 families, that means that, communities who experience typhoons get their gardens flooded. It means that they have to replant. It means that they have to do it again after their garden gets flooded and destroyed. And when communities want a return on their investment and to transform their place, it means persisting to finish despite typhoon damage. In the last picture, you can see that this is Barangay Ateneo, and they didn't even have a proper venue for their vegetable exchange, but they still made it fun and meaningful. They made do with the open space that's beside their covered court. And happily, at the end of the program, they were able to rebuild that and hold their graduation celebration in the court. So it was very symbolic of how their journey went and how they succeeded. So when communities are able to dream, lead, invest, and be championed, transformation really happens. So I'm proud to say that across our 7 waves, communities have been able to exchange 335,000 kilos of vegetables and fruits, worth 9.3 million pesos. To put that in context, this is actually just the tip of the iceberg, and communities produced more than that. What we're capturing on the day of the exchange is just one day out of, one day every week for 8 weeks in the exchange. And it doesn't even count the produce that they've already eaten at home or the produce that they've sold and given away. So there's abundance. And that's how we can say that hunger is gone in communities that do feedback. Farmers go from being monocroppers to farming diverse vegetables. In Wave 7, we actually recorded 116 kinds of vegetables and fruits exchanged. And this includes produce from fishing communities that now know how to farm. Another outcome of that is malnutrition is eliminated. And the flow is very simple. When communities and families have food, mothers feed their children. Very, very simple, as simple as that. And feedback's impact on eliminating malnutrition has been recognized in Santo Niño, that's a community in Palawan, and in La Libertad, where it was named as the good nutrition practice by the DOH for that region. So families also have new income because as planting becomes more ingrained in families, production rises. And then what they can't consume, rather than letting it spoil, it's very natural to just give it away or to sell it. And when you sell, that increases the incentive to plant and the motivation to keep doing it. So here's just some self-reported data from one of our communities, Barangay Aya. So 50% of families said that they were earning an additional income of 800 pesos per week from selling their produce. And the chart just shows that as families produce more, as time goes on, they're selling more as well, and they're earning more income. So communities we see really become resilient. They recover faster from typhoons. When some of our older communities were hit by Typhoon Odette, families were not worried about where they were going to get food because they know they could replant and then they can regain their food source. Most recently, what's the most significant for our recent wave of communities is that they're insulated from high food prices. We actually saw that they said that they could cut 50 to 70% of food costs by just growing their food. And that also means that they don't have to go to town as often to buy food. They have it fresh at home. And then when the synthetic fertilizers became unaffordable and they couldn't plant their cash crops, we taught them how to make their own organic compost. And they made it, they used it, and then they began supplying this to the municipality. And they actually turned this problem into a new income stream for their community. So with all of that, why are community partnerships important to ARC? First is that communities drive feedback innovations. They really, really sharpen the program. And many of the practices, processes, and efficiencies that we're deploying now are a culmination of our insights in the discartes of communities from initial waves. Second is they deliver the impact. And they keep it going because they're the ones creating new markets and food systems that are local, affordable, and nutritious. So just a couple of stories about that. So one barangay in Iloilo, Barangay Panuran, said that after they completed the program, they now want to do it annually on their own. And they're going to budget for it. They will continue it. And then in Palawan, Santo Niño, they created a market in the village and began supplying an island community during feedback. And then a year after graduating, they added 2 new markets in Salvacion and Coron. Third is that our communities inspire other communities to shift from the dependent handout mentality to becoming investors in their own dreams. Communities in Wave 7 actually rate their happiness in feedback as 9.5 out of 10. And joy is actually very attractive. There is a sense of change in these communities, and it attracts other communities who are now interested in experiencing the same change. So they see that it works and they want that too. So now let's go to the champion side. So I won't elaborate this as much, but because I feel like Global Alliance for the Future of Food already touched on this very extensively. But just to also affirm that, our champions are important to ARC because they enable us to pilot and test new models. So aside from feedback, our hunger solution, this year we've piloted a livelihood and upskilling program. It's called our Kita Kita, and a blended version of feedback called Feedback Plus. So with data from the pilots, we'll be iterating future versions and seeing, making sure basically that these models are relevant and impactful to communities we deploy them to. Second is our champions fuel scale. So as Tina mentioned earlier, our dream is to transform 1 million lives. And to do that faster, we want to develop a playbook and a franchise model that enables communities to do it themselves, even without ARC. So I don't know if anybody has done that before, franchising a social impact solution, but it's exciting for us. And it's exciting for us to dream about it that way and develop it, think about it, because we have champions who match us in dreaming boldly. Third is that our champions power through systemic change. With their influence, they can shift the social impact landscape from colonistic models to catalytic models with communities. So I want to end most of my presentation with this photo because I feel like it draws you in. It's very nice. I feel like sometimes we forget that food insecurity is about people, not just data points. When communities invest in themselves and champions co-invest with them, it really brings back the human element that social impact really needs. And at the end of the day, when we see our communities happy, proud, thriving, and united, we know that we're on the right track. Yeah. So make change happen with ARC. If you want to make change happen, we're welcoming champions for future waves. And we're also looking for some collaborators. So part-time impact analysts, we are happy to also consider students who want to do that with us. We're looking for data visualization designers and maybe a professor or class who is interested in doing like an impact tracking project with us, because I feel like it's going to be really, really interesting. So there, I hope that excites you, that fuels your imagination, and that gets you thinking about new ways to partner and solve for good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tina, for that really, I think, not just encouraging, but inspiring presentation on what ARC is doing to partner, especially, of course, with communities, but as well as with champions who can support the work that you're doing in the communities, to try to solve hunger in 5 weeks. That's really quite admirable. And I think there are many groups that can certainly learn from your experience, and that can hopefully encourage them also to see that, in a relatively limited period of time, but of course with a lot of investment in time, in terms of effort and time, and really seriously working with communities, it is possible to really address and solve food insecurity and malnutrition in so many parts of the country, and not just, I think, in the rural areas, because you do have few urban areas where they're doing urban vegetable gardening. So thank you for that, and I'm sure there will be many questions and comments also that will be coming forward from the audience after we have our two reactors. So thank you, Tina. We'd now like to go into our third speaker for this afternoon's webinar. We have Engineer Raymond Zamora, who's Program Director for AGAK Foundation, and I'm sure Engineer Zamora will describe what AGAK Foundation is all about. He's an advocate of smallholder farming communities. He's an electronic engineer by profession, developer of renewable energy, specifically on community biomass power generators. He's also the Oro Energy Resources Corporation's Chief Operating Officer. So may I call on Engineer Zamora to take the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Tina. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Maayong hapon sa tanan. I'm Raymond Zamora from Davao region. AGAK, I would like to correct that we are not a foundation, but we are a cooperative. AGAK means Muma Ugia Alang sa Kahamugaway, meaning care and guide for moderate lifestyle for the small farmers here in Mindanao. And this cooperative is composed of different tribes of Davao province, and then we have around 12 sites that we already organized. No? So AGAK is the link between smallholder farmers to global opportunity. So what we are trying to do right now here is harmonizing bioeconomy and food security. Okay, so as we all know that these IP communities are vulnerable from the left-leaning people, and in reality, tama naman yung ginawa nila, and then but there will be a time that there's a need for us to come together and solve this problem of hunger. So this is what we call whole of nation approach. So this is our framework, and I think all of us is very familiar with this in the academic side. By the way, I would like to emphasize that I would like to encourage everybody that there's a need for us to fly like an eagle and scratch the ground like a chicken. The problem, the problem right now is, especially in the academe, there are many bright people who can make like this framework, but I do not know if there are many people who can make this framework work on the ground. I think that is a big challenge for us, and there are many initiatives that cannot be translated into action in the field. How I wish that we can go together in the mountain. So I think with this framework, the context is internal push factor, isolation, inaccessibility, insurgency. So our target is resilient, self-reliant, and sustainable community. So most of our national government are all in the inputs, no? Needs assessment, skills training. Sad to say that most of them are all in this area, and everything is done by dole out. So with this, there are baseline performance metrics, capacity and capability building, and then for the baseline indicator for the infrastructure, no? And we wish to have more centers, AGAK centers in the GIDA area. Okay, GIDA means geographically isolated disadvantaged area. So lastly, this is the dream of the people in the mountain. They keep on asking, why do rich people can access commercial bank to loan. Why can they not loan in the commercial banking institutions? So in short, what we did, I invented this center. This is what we call the AGAK Center. The rooftop of that is PV solar panels. And then there is a powerhouse at the back of that, the side, on the side, 5 kilowatt solar hybrid power. And then the idea here is that this is tanggalable, bungkagable. This can be transported anywhere in the mountain. So this is like a container van size. And then modular. Then there's one computer inside, and then whiteboard, chair, and then it can accommodate a farmer inside the room. And the most important thing is the wireless point-to-point access for connectivity. And then the good thing about this also, it can provide lightings for 50 households in one sitio. And then add on, there is also a water pump to pump the water from the ground. There is added feature, nebulizer, and also for first aid. So hopefully this AGAK Center is a transformational center, no, to link the farmer to the market directly. No need for the middleman and the consolidators. So in short, this center is, it has electricity, connectivity, productivity, mobility, and we have to maintain all this infrastructure. So this is our platform. This is our ecosystem for the community. From the sitio, there is an IP community, and then we link them to the industry who needs fresh produce, pre-processed product, not yet for the end product. We do not want the IP to make chocolates. And then there's a web and mobile app. I can share to you our website, and then an online payment for them directly. So we open an account for the mother, not the father, because the father is not good to keep money. And then logistic for the delivery system. And we as cooperative with different tribes, we are located in the city of Tagum. And then different locations, because what we notice in the area, if you put POs or people's organization, if the money is there, they are very harmonized. But if the money is lost, then they will argue and the POs will die. So the organizations that we build is we put it in the city, and then they own it, all the sitio that is member of this AGAK. What is the red one here? This is what we call in the during the time of Bigong is the whole of nation approach. I am a private member of the PRLEC, Poverty Reduction Livelihood Employment Cluster. I don't like LCAC. I really like PRLEC. So the idea here is that if the national agency can be of help for the communities, we will access their services according to the needs of the community, not the mandate of the NGAs. So capacity and capability building of TESDA. TESDA is very good in helping this project. DepEd, DTI, DA, DSWD, and the LGU. And also DOE, and especially this DU, no, the electric cooperative in the province. So I think the most important thing here is that the community, during the needs assessment, the national agency is there to back up the request according to the needs of the community. So this is also another thing that we keep on dreaming, the financing and marketing of the LUMADs, of the smallholder farmer. So I keep on coming back to DBP and Land Bank, and the problem is their KPI. If we cannot pay, then there's something wrong with their key performance indicator. So hopefully, I do not know how to fund this whole idea. As long as I have money, and then I can put in and then believe on what I am doing right now here in Davao region. So for the evaluation and monitoring, Joseph, Ateneo, and all the academe are involved in order for us to think critically on the things that they need to uplift, no? Because sometimes engineers are good in doing interventions without knowing if it is really the need of the community. So as of now, AGAK Marketing Cooperative is registered at CDA, business permit. We have also BIR, and we have official receipt if somebody would like to have business with us. And then I'll give you our account if you are interested. So our active partners here, EO Resources Corporation for the Cardaba and COCOSAP, and Nordeco for our electric cooperative for the off-grid electrification, and Ateneo de Davao, since Ateneo is the Mindanao Renewable Energy Center, they keep on helping us develop the biomass power project. So I think we have similar for Tina's, the second speaker. This is what I call the creation of sitio investment plan. I've been wondering why there is no, I did not hear that somebody is having this sitio investment plan or portfolio. So what I did is that we have this sitio investment plan that is bankable. Take note for all the people who would like to help. I think it would be good for us that our proposals are all bankable. So in order for us to be bankable, we have to link them to the industry partners and then get the growers agreement, a supply agreement, and all those things needed for the bank for the financial closure. And before anything else, we have to shopping to the national agency because they are there to help the marginalized people in this planet. Okay, then this is the good thing. This is the bigger picture. The AGAK infrastructure is looking at the things in the sitio. They have a very big land, huge land, very big. Okay, so the minimum is 500 to 1,000 hectares per sitio. Sitio is composed of 60 to 100 households. And then there is a forest, and then they already have their agri-products. What we notice, the boss of the sitio is, of the smallholder farmers, is the middleman, the consolidator, not the politician, because the politician is only after 3 years. So the middleman is the one who is governing this farmer, land, agri-products, and forest. And I've noticed that these are the things that they need: electricity, connectivity, productivity, mobility, and maintainability. If they have this one, they have a good information coming from the urban, linking them to Visayas, Mindanao, and all over the Philippines, in order for them that their produce can go directly to the consumer. So for me, what I did is that I go first with the electric cooperative. I cannot have connectivity to them if they don't have electricity. So the DU, I have this agreement with them. Please help us to provide electricity for this JIDA. So what I learned from China is that there is what they call the poverty reduction is targeted poverty reduction. This is designed for them. And then this is not one size fits all. One size fits none. So very particular with one area. So for the production, there is Iho Foods. And then for the mobility, there's a truck that is available that is, we do not need to buy our own trucks for the CAPEX. We have to access the resources from other investors. So this is the data that we have been in the past. Very interesting because this is the first trial that for the Lumads that they deliver Cardaba, no? They started 2 tons, the first delivery. Then the price is 12 pesos. And then as we go along, it rises to 13.5. And then when the produce is very big, we can supply in as much as 20 tons. And what happened next is the price goes down. And it goes to 4 pesos. But very interesting, the characteristic of the smallholder farmer, the people who involves in the delivery. So we do not consolidate the product, but what we did is we get them from the small farmers. So that is our experience in the mountain. And we asked the partnership of Lourdeco so that the development of distributed renewable energy for solar, biomass, and hydro in order for us to be inclusive. So I think human development, economic, environment, and technology, we will marry them all in order for us to have a good access for the smallholder farmer in the mountain. And lastly, what we are doing right now is we cannot treat this one alone. No? If we are going to have capability building alone, it's not a solution. So this is a puzzle, and then there's a need for us to collaborate. So in short, I can sum up my 3 things that are very important for us. Number 1, collaborating for collective change. Number 2, mountain to market connection. Number 3, distributed renewable energy. So I hope I was able to deliver my sharing. Then I like this picture also because for the first time in my life that I installed renewable energy in the mountain, they were there without somebody asking them to be there. So very interesting part that they gather together and study, and they have a good smile. Good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you very much, Engineer Zamora, for that equally interesting, and actually very inspiring also your story of this innovation that you have been able to bring to the indigenous people's communities in the part of Mindanao. And really the partnerships that you talked about have been quite extensive, starting with the private sector, companies that could buy the produce of the IPs, and then of course the different government institutions that can serve the needs of the IPs, and including of course also the other cooperatives and other groups that might be able, including of course the academe, as you mentioned, the Ateneo de Davao University being a partner. So thank you, Engineer Zamora, for being able to give us that really very good overview of the work that the valuable work that you're doing with the IPs. So at this point, I'd now like to turn over, after our three very interesting speakers, I'd like to turn over the floor to our two student reactors, and I'll start with Ivory Jane Doble, who's a junior taking up BS Health Sciences at the Ateneo de Manila University. She's a scholar who's passionate about servant leadership and advocates for health equity for all, especially for marginalized sectors like the indigenous peoples of the Philippines. She's the current co-commissioner of the Commission of Ateneans for Indigenous Peoples, where she has led various projects that strive to uplift, promote, and protect IP rights and culture. So Ivory, please, you have the floor for a few minutes to react to our speakers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for that warm welcome, Ma'am Tina. So before I start, I would like to thank Sir Oliver, Ms. Tina Hipolito, and Engineer Raymond for the very relevant and timely talks on different actors in sustainable food systems and the future, along with the faculty and administrators who put together this series of webinars on our food systems. As mentioned in the introduction by Ma'am Tina Liamzon earlier, because of high fuel prices and supply issues, we are currently experiencing food inflation that causes food prices to skyrocket. I personally feel the effect of inflation, especially now that I stay in the university dorm and as I budget for the meals that I cook every day. Nahihirapan na akong bumili ng groceries given my limited weekly budget, which is why I really do resonate with the issues on rising food prices, much more its effect on every Filipino's access to food security and health. Given this, how exactly does the lack of access to food and nutrition affect our lives? As a health sciences student, we are taught to look at health not just through a biomedical perspective, but also using socioeconomic factors that highlight social determinants of health outcomes like income, social protection, education, unemployment, working life conditions, housing, and most especially food insecurity. There is an ongoing cycle between disease and food insecurity. When a family that cannot afford nutritious food is exposed to stress, disease management can be challenging because of poor nutrition. On top of that, the expenses and time used to treat these illnesses constrain the family's finances even more, leaving little money for access to nutrition and healthcare services. So this is where the cycle persists. Additionally, indigenous peoples in the Philippines are one of the most affected sectors regarding this issue. For one, their ancestral domains are taken away from them by private companies and sometimes even by the government, leaving them with no agricultural land as their source of food and livelihood. During the COVID-19 pandemic, they were also negatively impacted by the strict restrictions, preventing them from gathering crops, fishing, and planting on their hill farms. This reality calls for a collaborative effort and urgent action. In line with this, partnerships are then essential in combating food insecurity and unsustainability to meet the demands of the growing Philippine population with a large number of undernourished individuals. These partnerships are usually among public and private entities, and Director Oliver's talk on the overview of global partnerships on the future of food sheds light on how private entities like foundations step up and contribute public goods to advance sustainable food systems. These foundations are able to take risks, are flexible, give funding, and link foundations and communities together. On the other hand, Ms. Tina's talk on how ARC solves hunger in 5 weeks shows that community partnerships and approaching the communities at the grassroots level, most importantly involving everyone in the community, made the feedback project very sustainable because the communities themselves are motivated and agriculturally productive. Lastly, Engineer Raymond's talk on the link between smallholder farmers to global opportunities that featured how AGAK Marketing Cooperative enables IP communities in Mindanao to be linked with the market directly, diminishing the need for middlemen in selling their products or raw materials. This enables IP communities to learn more, to earn more, and to keep their livelihoods afloat. The talks emphasized that in intersectoral partnerships, each partner adds a key component or strength to the overall goal of food sustainability that can only be realized by working together and collaborating in solving food insecurity through a whole society approach. No single organization or individual would likely be able to generate sustainable food security programs on their own. Even if they did, they would not be able to cover their expenditures and tasks. To overcome these obstacles and risks, partnerships are therefore important and necessary to make food security, nutrition, and food sustainability accessible for all. With this, I hope that we, students, as future professionals of our country, will strive to support sustainable food systems, especially for the benefit of marginalized communities like our IPs. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ivory. I'd now like to call Edward Lacadwe, who's a fourth-year college student at the Ateneo de Davao University. He's taking a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English and is from Davao Occidental. As a young member of the Manobo tribe, Edward expresses his indigeneity through poetry. He's also the current president of the Ateneo Lumad Students Organization, or also advocates for the preservation of culture of the Lumads of Mindanao and advances for the strengthening of authenticity among the Lumad students of the university. Edward, you have the floor.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, as for my side, it was such a very insightful talks having our speakers who have shared their expertise into partnerships on showing their expertise into food sustainability and security, as well as showing off their partnerships and experiences as well. With the talk, the root, the very cause of this talk is having to address the problems that has been brought with the pandemic, climate change, and conflicts around the world. With that very three context, I would like also to share that in our side, in indigenous communities, because I am a member of both indigenous communities, product of both parents who are farmers. So COVID pandemic really controls the movement of farmers to limit the movement of farmers to produce foods and even do farming because of the risk of going outside and of the health protocols that was imposed by the government. Second, for the climate change, there has been an increase into temperatures, experiences on the bad weathers, and it affects the crops and even the landfills of farmers, especially of those who are living in remote areas who are very prone to landslides and flash floods. So it takes a lot of time to recover the food sources that has been damaged. And for the conflict, there has been rural distractions into crops, and even the widespread of landmines have caused those farmers the difficulty into producing food and to start farming again. And with that, the three speakers addressed and fulfilled the thoughts um, on the importance of on the importance of first and foremost principle-based transformation into farming, which was being addressed with our first speakers, such as being renewable, resilient, equitable, diverse, healthy, inclusive, and interconnected. So having this said, it is also important that we have to ensure the approaches to government as a way to address the structural inequities in our food system, as well as increase and broaden the knowledge and invest into research on how to still improve food systems in the country. So our second speaker as well, Ms. Tina, addressed the partnership in the communities, which have been very beneficial to students, especially to rural communities as well. Parents who could not afford, students and parents who are struggling, to have provide lunch and meals into students going to school. So these are a better way to help students and parents as well. And for AGAK Foundation, I was very impressed, with the structure and framework that they have been. I'm sorry, excuse me, am I audible?
It's okay. You can no more sound. Go ahead, please, Edward.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. So with the AGAK Foundation, they have been linking the indigenous farmers to market directly, having potential opportunities for farmers, to venture out their products as well without being disrupted by middlemen and other politician involved in the process. So as I was listening to the talk, I have found out that I am very thankful, as a product of both farmers and a farmer myself as well. I am very thankful to have given the opportunity to join on this kind of conversation in which it had broadened my knowledge, and as well as it helped me to understand more of the outside farming world. How are these communities working on the farmers? What are the responsibilities of social organizations, private organizations that has been supporting farmers, indigenous farmers, especially indigenous peoples, or farmers and fishermen. And so these programs really benefits us farmers, and the future generation would be very happy to see that we are building a nation where everyone is helping each other. And I am still hoping to have the government continuing supporting farmers, especially with their local products, the machineries that they need. And sana we would have more talk to be extended on the ground. So I would love to someday have some talk and invite farmers as well, so that they would learn, aside from farming, they would learn another things, another systems that they really need into understanding how things work on farming and on market and industries. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, both Ivory and Edward, for your reactions, and your reflections on our three speakers' presentations. At this point, we would like to have a photo shoot. We'd like to ask everybody to turn on their videos for a very brief photo session. And maybe we can close the screen sharing, Vixen, so we can get everybody on the screen. This is before we start our open forum, and I'd like to encourage everybody while we're waiting for the photos to be taken. Can you jot down the questions that you might have for our various speakers? We're not ready for the photo. Can I ask if we're ready? Because otherwise we can proceed with the open forum while we're waiting. Yes, we have had a few comments here thanking our speakers. Thank you our reactors as well. Do we have any other questions? There are no particular questions addressed to our speakers. Would any of our speakers want to see any additional things? any additional points that you might have while we're waiting? So we have had positive comments about the presentations and the reflections. Any questions so far? Or can I ask Engineer Raymond, Tina, and Oliver, would you want to add anything? Engineer, you had your hand raised.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I'll do it. I suppose that all the participants are all here coming from the academe. I would like to encourage everybody that the next time that we are going to have our interventions or anything that is related to helping other people is that it would be good to ensure that all our plans, we have somebody in the field that is passionate, or we can how we can assure that our good idea from the academy will translate into action that has an impact, no? Not just only a quick impact projects, but it will have a sustainable impact to the community.
So, Engineer, you're raising this question to the audience, no? How might, let's say, academic institutions be able to really provide more relevant kinds of collaborations with, let's say, with CSOs and our people's organizations, including, of course, the IPs, to address the issue of food insecurity and to make those solutions sustainable. So maybe one of our audience, from the audience, can also respond to that. But maybe we can, any other interventions also from Oliver and Tina?
Yeah, yes, Tina, thanks. Oh, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Go ahead.
No, thanks, Tina. No, I just wanted to encourage all the students. I mean, Tina H basically did a plug about opportunities to collaborate, calling for some volunteers, and at the same time, the other speaker from AGAK also said that there are other opportunities to work with them. So I could only encourage the students to look for opportunities and carve time to volunteer to these types of works. This is really how we see those principles and visions and aspirations put into action. No, maraming time ngayon. I mean, you don't need to go out of your offices or out of your home to volunteer and do these types of work. So maybe you could reduce a little bit of your Netflix time and try to volunteer to these worthy causes. It not only how do you call this? It really puts into context and into practical actions the things that we learn in school, in the universities. I could only encourage you to make the most out of these opportunities that are presented to you. Over.
Okay, thanks. Tina, did you have a final word?
Maybe just to also build on what Oliver said about encouraging our young audience here. I don't know if you feel that social impact is something you can do, but actually I came from a business background and I found that social impact might be the most important thing that you would be doing. And I hope that you consider it. It's fun if you know how to find the fun. And that's how we fuel our energy at ARC. We always make sure that what we do is fun for us, fun for communities. And at the end of the day, that brings out the best ideas. So don't be afraid about social impact. Don't think of it as another something certificate I need to check off, but enjoy it and really reflect on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina. I'd just like to read this comment from the floor. Hello, nice to hear all the presentations. I'm currently working with the provincial government of Misamis Oriental, and our office focuses on providing sustainable and impactful livelihood opportunities for the needy. We do not rely on the budget of the LGU, but we always do collaborate with NGAs in the private sector to have a more substantial intervention. So this again, one of the comments on how partnerships are being enabled with LGUs, no, in private sector. Now, I believe that Gail had her hand raised as well as Jimmy. So shall we call Gail first and then Jimmy very quickly?
Thank you, Ma'am Tina. No, I was supposed not to write on the chat box, but maybe something like this, the webinars that we conduct every so often, every school year, and particularly for partnerships and things like this, no interventions that are really done by groups on the ground. Maybe if there is some kind of like an institutionalized kind of presentation of these kind of interventions, may be a good way to help our student organizations at the start of the school year when they plan what it is that they'd like to do as an organization. So that it is something that is pointed or already targeted. They do not need to think of what will they do as their kind of community engagement for the school year, so that they can already think of a particular focus partner that they can really bring their energies and resources into. So it might be a good thing, no, at the start or even intercession period, if these kinds of summit of organizations that really do concrete things on the ground can be something that can be institutionalized for our student organizations for better and systematized participation also on the part of our students. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our presenters.
Yes, thank you very much for that suggestion, Gail. And I'd like to ask Jimmy, maybe you can have the last comment for the open forum.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Tina, salamat. Gusto ko lang magpasalamat no, sa ating mga speaker. Your inputs have personally have been very insightful and inspiring for me. You know, I work with the ADMU and I see here no see Miss Ophelie Alzona Pernella. We work actually in the service learning programs of the college and I promise we will explore no possibilities of collaboration in terms of making our students engage in some manner to the service learning programs. And of course, there are real possibilities for research tie-ups in terms of also getting our students engaged. And if we are able to spread the word, pwede namin ibahagi itong mga napakinggan natin sa mga kapwa naming guro at ibang staff pa dito sa ADMU. So yun, uli, maraming salamat, tapat at lubos na pasasalamat sa inyo para sa inyong binahagi ngayong hapon.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. I think that's really important for us to note because we have an audience which is primarily coming from the academe, how to build those partnerships between academe and the CSOs and other institutions really to address collectively the issues of food insecurity and hunger. And so as there are no more particular questions and comments from the floor, from the audience, I'd like now to formally turn over the closing of this webinar to Roel Ravanera, who's the current Executive Director of the Xavier Science Foundation. I turn over the floor to you, Roel. And again, thank you so much to our presenters and our reactors.
Thank you, Tina. Group photo, are we done with that? Just asking.
Yes, sir. Hello, yes, thank you, Vixen.
Okay, thank you for that. And then as part of our closing program, we would like to acknowledge our speakers and reactors. And we will be giving a certificate of appreciation. If I can read, the certificate of appreciation is presented to Oliver Oliveros for his valuable contribution as a speaker to the webinar Different Actors in Sustainable Food Systems and the Future. This is part 3 and focus on partnerships, done on November 9, 2022. Signed by myself and also by Mr. Rivera Rizalino, the Vice President for Mission Integration of Ateneo de Manila University. Same certificate will be given to Also to Tina Hipolito of Art, and also to Engineer Raymond Zamora of the AGAK Foundation, or the Marketing Cooperative in Davao. And then we will also give the certificate of appreciation to our reactors, to Miss Ivory Jane Doble, and also to Edward Lacadwe. Thank you so much for our resource persons and reactors. Maybe just a short recap of what we've gone through this afternoon. I think our resource speakers have emphasized the importance of the experience, what we're experiencing now in terms of food and hunger. And the word that I can resonate with is that we are so disconnected in a way. The producers with the consumers, the farmers with the support institutions, even the private sector and government agencies. More so with people and planet. That's why we're experiencing now, for example, this impact of climate change. And I think the way to move forward is really to look at food and hunger from a systems perspective. So we'll have to look at this from a systems thinking. And I think that's the way for us to connect. And the experiences that were shared to us in a way would narrate to that. For example, the foundations shared by Oliver globally are really doing a lot of work in terms of trying to help those who are left behind. Art Feedback is a really inspiring initiative in trying to help communities undergoing difficulties in trying to address their food needs. And, you know, so inspiring in a way because they can address this in like over a month, 5 weeks or so. And then, you know, and that's really, really good to know. And then, of course, AGAK serving more like a bridge between the indigenous peoples and the support groups that, you know, they are thinking of. And that's the, in a way, using technologies, you know, using solar power, using communications. And I think that's the way for us to connect, especially those people in the remote areas. Some would say that maybe our efforts are so small or maybe insignificant, but again, going back to what Oliver mentioned earlier, this is also being done globally, not only in our country, but globally. Other countries are doing this as well. And I think this would have big impact in terms of satisfying the food needs of people. And just to note also that while we are having this forum today, there is also a COP27, or the Conference of Parties in Egypt. And I think they're also thinking about, you know, how we can improve our planet to become more habitable. And that, of course, will include food security as well. So these are very important ideas, very important developments for us to know. And hopefully this can continue on, these exchanges, as has been encouraged by some of our speakers and participants, for the academe to step in and do some, you know, thinking along that direction for researches, for their service learning, all these social engagements can be related to that in a way. And hopefully we can continue on this kind of discussion, this kind of sharing into the future. So this is the 17th forum already, online forum that started in 2020. And hopefully this will continue on as scheduled, as discussed by the working group. Maybe we'll do this on the first quarter of next year. And they're exploring already to focus on governance and policy issues as a major topic of discussion. Okay, we've gone beyond 5 o'clock now, so I'll stop there. And hopefully these exchanges will continue on into the future. Maraming salamat po sa lahat. Thank you. Okay, we have an evaluation form. For those who would want to receive certificate of attendance, we would require you to fill up the evaluation form and submit this to us. We will do that. Thank you. Tina, thank you so much also. Thank you, Vixon. Thank you, everyone. I hope I did not forget anything.
Thanks, everyone.